Welcome to After Church, a place for a gentle deconstructing. So if you've ever had some questions, you've ever just wanted to dig a little bit deeper, if you've ever wanted to add a level of intellectual curiosity without judgment, you've come to the right place. Welcome to After Church. So today I wanted to talk about the church has a branding issue. Now, some of you all might be saying, what does branding have to do with the church? So when we look at the definition of branding, branding is the promotion of a particular product or company by means of advertising and distinctive design. And the church absolutely has a design. It has a way that it is promoting itself, a way that it is showing up. And I think that there are some ways in which the church could make some changes. We hear the conversations, we see how many people are leaving the church, we're hearing about the numbers declining, and I think a lot of that is really rooted in the brand and the identity that the church has evolved into. So I'm going to give a few suggestions of things that I think would help the church with its branding issue. So the first thing when it comes to branding, I'm going to say, let's talk about education. Let's talk about the need for a real theological education, especially for so many of our leaders. So when we talk about the church's current state, and at least I'll say for how I grew up, the Bible was the word of God. It was an unchallenged authority, point blank in the period. What it says is what we're taking it as face value, which is great for biblical studies. But when you stretch beyond just the biblical studies and you get into a theological study, you can start talking about the historical context. You can start talking about who wrote these narratives, when they wrote them, why did they write them, who are they writing them to? What did the people who originally received these letters and these writings, how did they interpret them? How are they meant to be taken in? And then once you have that larger context, not only for the historical background of the text, but also the political implications, when you start saying who made these translations, who paid for the translations, especially when you start to understand with any kind of translating, you're not going to get a pound for pound translation. There's not going to be a one for one, word for word translation most of the time. And as most of us are familiar with, you'll hear someone and you'll say, oh, what does that mean? If you'll hear maybe some Korean or Japanese or some Spanish, and you'll say, what does that mean in English? And you'll hear someone say, if you translate it like straight out, it's not going to make sense. So they'll paraphrase and they'll say what they're trying to say is, and they'll take the original meaning of the words and they'll put them in a way that makes sense in English. So you don't have a straight translation, a one-for-one translation. You get a paraphrase, and it's that person giving you their interpretation of what those words mean. But often when you start to understand the language and when you start to dig a little bit deeper, you'll understand, yes, this one word may be an accurate translation, but if I get the 3 or 4 words that may embody what the author's trying to say, you get a much more full picture of what someone's talking about. So all of those things fall under the umbrella of education. And the more education people have, the better that they're able to interpret the text, the better they're able to interpret the intention of the text, and the more that they are able to better teach it, better to equip the people in their church to understand how to apply these words to our modern context. So first thing that I'm going to lay out as far as rebranding the church is really adding some higher levels of education, getting some theological education under people's belts so that they're better able to lead, better able to teach, because that's the foundation of so much of what we do. The second thing, when I start to talk about rebranding, I'm going to talk about cultural competence. So when I say that, I mean, do you understand the world of the people that you're talking to? Culturally speaking, do you understand what your folks are going through? Do you understand what's happening in the world? Do you understand what people mean when they talk about pronouns? Now, I'm not asking if you agree with pronouns. I'm asking, do you understand it? Do you even get the point that they're trying to make? Do you understand why women might be scared when they look at the policies that are going forward in our current political sphere? Do you get why women who want to have children and women who don't would be scared about how things are shifting? Do you understand the point that people are making? Because if you don't understand where someone is coming from and why they feel the way that they feel, you can't have an actual judgment on what's going on. You don't even understand the point, so you can't say whether it's right or wrong because you don't even get it. So I think that there's definitely that area of cultural competency, not only from a political and from a social sphere, but also economically. Do you understand where your people's money is going? And yes, we can talk about how the love of money is the root of all evil, but you do need money to exist. So when we start talking about companies that are doing mass layoffs, the challenges that come from return to office and the pushback that has come from a lot of the people who are being now forced to go back into the office, when you start seeing industries that look like they're falling apart, like the nurses that don't want to go back to working, or the teachers who are saying, like, I can't go back into a classroom. I've been a teacher for so long. It's my passion, but I can't keep doing it. Do you understand why those people are leaving those professions? Do you understand economically how the people who you are talking to are being impacted by the finances, by the state of the market, by the inflation rates that are going crazy right now? Do you get it? Do you have cultural competency? Because again, you can't speak to someone if you don't understand what's going on in their world. So that's going to be my second point, is cultural competency. Third, I'm going to talk about the need for humility and transparency. And so those two things for me, they go hand in hand. So when I start talking about that, I mean the humility and the transparency to be able to say, hey, I think I got that wrong. I know I said something last year and I had a particular stance, but I've learned some new things and I need to change my position on that. Or maybe, yes, I still believe that, and now I've added on to that. I've grown. I'm able to show you the evolution of what my faith looks like. I'm not still talking and teaching the same old thing, but I'm living in the current world that we exist in. And I'm going to be honest about that. I'm going to humble myself to be honest and to be transparent when I say, hey, I actually don't know anything about that. I hear you asking, and I know you want me to have a lot of answers, but I want to be honest that I might need to either go study that and come back to you. Maybe it might take me a month. Don't ask me about it next week, because I'm probably not gonna have an answer next week. But being honest to say, like, I don't know. Or maybe let me tag in a friend. I don't know anything about that. That's not my expertise, but I know somebody who actually does study that, and they study it a lot. And so I'm gonna bring them into this conversation so they can help fill in those gaps, because I hear that you have a need. I'm not gonna shame you for having questions. I'm just gonna be honest that I might not have all the answers. So I think when you start talking about that kind of humility, that kind of transparency, you build trust. And trust is really important for building relationships, which build communities. And so that is going to be my fourth point. As far as the church rebranding, I think the church really needs to take a look at how it's building community. What are the ways in which we can take all of these items that have come before, with the education, with the transparency and the humility, with our cultural competency? How can we bring all of those together and really create space and opportunity for people to get to know each other in a space, in an environment where there's no pressure? I'm not talking to you trying to convince you of anything. I'm not trying to change your belief system. I'm not trying to tell you 17 ways why what you're doing is wrong. I just want to get to know you. I just want to hear you out. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear you laugh. I want to have fun. And yes, we have those surface level conversations, which helps you find the people who you click with and like start to build those relationships so you can eventually get to those deeper points. And when you do come from a space of wanting to understand someone, not necessarily be right, but I just want to listen to you. I just want to understand. You're able to start to dive deeper into those conversations and deeper into who someone is, which is how you really build a space where you have community, where you have people where they're excited to celebrate you when the good things come, and they're excited to hold you up and support you when the bad comes, because that's what community is. And so just to give a few thoughts that I have about some spaces where churches could be really coming in to build that community, let's bring back a fish fry. Let's get some fried catfish, some spaghetti plates. Let's get that going in the basement of the church, just so people can talk. No muss, no fuss. We're just here to have a good time. Let's get a barbecue going. Let's maybe get some gospel karaoke. Everybody loves a good Kirk Franklin song. You know, don't let Tamla Mann get on. People are going to show out. They're going to have a great time. Let's really create some space for people to just have a good time, hang out, no pressure, no trying to convince anybody of anything. Just hanging out, getting to know each other, building those relationships. So when the good, really good comes and the really bad comes, you have community to be there with you through both. So those are my thoughts on rebranding the church. Please feel free, let me know in the comments how you think the church could be rebranding and what would help us come back together and really build the church back up to what it is supposed to be and what God envisioned for his church. I look forward to hearing from you. Bye.